So scouting in FM23 has been revamped, and it's certainly different to how it's been in previous iterations of the game. And if you're a new player of Football Manager, it can seem like a complicated area of the game to navigate. Well, we're going to jump into a game of FM23 right now and show you how to set up your scouting network so that the best players in the world are falling into your inbox on a daily basis. So let's give you a comprehensive introduction to scouting, and it all starts when you're setting up your game. Because how reliant you're going to be on scouts to find out how good players are is going to depend on whether you're going to use what's known as attribute masking in your save. With masking on, it means you'll need to use scouts to reveal the full attributes of players so that you can work out how good they are. Whereas if you don't have attribute masking enabled, although you'll still need to use scouting to find players around the globe, they won't be required to reveal the attributes of those individuals. The other area of this screen that's important to bear in mind when we're thinking about scouting is the size of the database that we're going to use. You can see that the larger the database we have, the more players are going to be included in our save, potentially giving you more players to scout. But with scouting in mind, we could even go more in depth than that. And if in our save we want to make sure that players from a particular region are available for us to go and scout, we can add those in to create a custom database setup. Now, once we're inside our save and our team is selected, the first thing to point out is that there are two ways that you can find players that don't rely on scouting. But the first, we could come down to our menu down the left here and click on the scouting tab. But rather than send our scouts out to look for players, we could do it manually ourselves by hovering over the Players tab and selecting players in range. Now, this will bring up a list of several thousand individuals that you can click on and decide for yourself whether they're an individual that you would like to try and sign. Now, if you are using attribute masking, this is where our scouts could come in handy. By hovering over reports, we can then assign our scouts to go and find out more about this player. If we just want a very light touch, we could just scout them for 1 week, or we could scout them until we know everything about them. We can even assign a specific scout to go and watch this player, and we can set how long we'd like them to track them, from up to 3 months or just until we know everything about their game. From this screen, we can even increase the number of players that we're going to be able to manually search. To do that, we could click on our scouting range and we can adjust where we're going to be scouting in the world by deciding what our scouting package is going to cover. Now, currently we're subscribed to a scouting package that allows us to see players across Europe, but we could instead up the amount we're spending on scouting per month and now see players from across the world, which should mean that the number of players that we have access to increases. Now, it's worth pointing out that we can change what package we're subscribed to on a rolling basis, and it might be that if you don't have the largest scouting budget available, you might still be able to scout a broader area for a short amount of time. It will use up your scouting budget faster, but if you're approaching a transfer window, you might want to increase the scope that your scouts will draw from. But now let's show you that second method you can use to find players without even relying on scouts. And to do that, we'll need to click on the Transfers tab that sits just below Scouting. And in fact, I'm actually going to swap saves over to my stream save where I'm Kingstonian in England's Tier 6, because this is a particularly useful method to use with lower league saves, particularly if it's your first day in the job and your club doesn't even have scouts yet. Well, one way that you can still find players is to hover over the Director of Football tab, and this will work even if your club doesn't have a Director of Football. All you need to do is go down to where it says Suggest Transfer Targets, and either your Director of Football or your Assistant Manager or even your Chairman, if you have no staff, can suggest potential signings. Now, for lower league saves, we might want to look at free transfers, and we can specify what position on the pitch we'd like to have player suggestions for. We can even drill down deeper and pick a particular role that we would like suggestions to be made for. And when we click on the Suggest button, our assistant manager will bring up players that we can then potentially invite for trials or try and scout further if we've got scouts at our club, and this can be a rich source of finding players early on in a save. But with those two methods explained, now let's start utilising our scouting network, and the first thing that we need to do is to come up to Staff, where we can hover over the responsibilities and we can move down and click on Scouting. Now from here, one thing we might want to do is to take control of the ability to assign our scouts. Otherwise, that's going to be left to our chief scout Scout, and they will decide where we are going to scout around the world. If we would like more say in that, we can take control, come down to confirm, and now we're in charge of setting scouting assignments. So let's set up our scouting network, and to do that we're going to click on the Scouting tab, and from the options that run across the top of the screen we're going to click on Recruitment Focus. Now in order to send our scouts to different parts of the world we need to click on this Create Recruitment Focus button, but as you can see for me on day one in charge it's greyed out. If that's the case for you, all you need to do is to come across to your inbox and you'll see that the game is urging you to create a new tactic. Well, if we just select a placeholding tactic for now with any of the formations that it recommends for you, you'll see that when we return to the Scouting tab and go back to Recruitment Focus, now that we have a tactic selected, it will let us assign scouts. Now, if you're taking over at a large club, you may already have active scouting assignments in progress. If you want to, you can amend those by clicking on the little pen icon and making changes to them, or you could scrap the existing recruitment focus that your club has, and we can start our own journey. Now, the first thing that FM23 is going to require from you when setting up a recruitment focus is for you to decide what positions on the pitch you would like to go and scout. You can select a one-off individual position or select a range of positions that you would like to scout for players for, or alternatively, you could ask your scouts to search for any position from the tactic that you've created, which is why it's probably advisable for you to have a tactic that you're happy with before setting up your scouting assignments on day one. Now, if we are eager to keep our recruitment focus as broad as possible, rather than selecting any position from our tactic for our scouts to find, we could also click on this little drop-down arrow here, and rather than just search for positions on the pitch that fit the tactic that we've loaded, we could instead click any, and now our scouts will find players that fit into all of the different roles available in Football Manager. Now, if you are looking to scout just a specific position on the field, you can also go further than that and ask your scouts to find a particular role. So if you want a false 9 as part of your tactic, you can ask your scouts to go and find that particular role, and you can even adjust how proficient players are in playing the role that you've selected. But then on the right hand side of the recruitment focus team, we're going to have more in-depth information. The first thing that you might want to do is to create a name for your recruitment focus so that it's easy for you to locate if you want to make changes to it at a later date. You can then tell your scout whether you're looking for players that your club might sign permanently, or whether you're just looking for loan signing suggestions, or whether you're open to both. Below that, you can then inform your scouts what kind of standard of player you're looking for them to find. It might be that you're looking for a younger talent who might not be that developed yet but has bags full of potential, or it could be that you want to tell your scout to look for players that are first team ready so that they can go straight into your starting 11. Next, we can tell our scouts the age range that we would like player suggestions from. We can keep that at its absolute broadest, but if we've got specific requirements, we can always tweak these so that our scouts will find players that will fit into those age brackets. And then below that, we've got arguably the most important area of our recruitment focus, the area that we are going to send our scout to. Now, when we click on this drop-down menu, first of all, we can decide whether we'd like to send our scouts to look at a particular competition, and the ones that will be available to us will be influenced by the scouting package that we're subscribed to, as well as the leagues that we've loaded as part of our database. But if we move down and hover over the different options that are available to us, we could assign one of our scouts to go and look at a particular league or even a cup competition. But alternatively, we might ask our scouts to base their reports on geography rather than competitions. To do that, we could pick a particular nation and ask them to go and look at players based in that country, or we could go broader and ask them to look at a specific region around the world, or even an entire continent. But the broader we make our search, the less focused it will be. At this point, it's worth pointing out that if we would like to scout a particular nation, we don't have to restrict ourselves to just one. For example, rather than scouting all of Eastern Europe, we could instead just pick some nations from that region that we would like to scout, but we don't have to restrict ourselves to just one. We can add as many as we would like to this focus, but we can leave off some of the nations that might have been included had we scouted the entire region. Now, one thing it's worth bearing in mind when deciding deciding where we're going to send our scouts is the areas of the world that our scouting network are familiar with. And to find that out, we go and click on the Scouting Coverage tab. From here, if we click on the World Knowledge tab, then the areas that are in green are the parts of the world that our scouts know best. And we can even click on our scouts individually and see which areas of the world they are experts in covering. For example, Ben Wrigglesworth knows the English market very well, whereas Roman Bach is less of an expert in England, but does know France, Belgium and Spain exceptionally well. But in addition, he has a very good knowledge of 2 African nations. Now, we may wish to bear that in mind when deciding where exactly we're going to scout. For example, for Mr. Wrigglesworth, we could ask him to focus on the English market only. Now, before we assign this recruitment focus to Mr. Wrigglesworth, there is one other thing that we need to decide, and that's how quickly we would like him to return reports versus how long we would like this assignment to be. If we're approaching a transfer deadline and we need targets fast, we could click make this a top assignment, and 2 or more scouts might be assigned to looking for players matching these requirements. Alternatively, you could leave it as standard, but if you'd like it to go for a longer period of time, you could make this an ongoing scouting assignment so that one of your scouts will permanently be assigned to looking for the position on the pitch that you've selected or the stipulations that you've covered. Now, if you wish, you could just leave this as an open assignment and any of your scouts might start to search for players based on these parameters. Or if you want a little bit more control, you can decide the exact scout or scouts that you're going to assign. Now, you'll see that currently all of our scouts are grayed out and we can't select any of them. To correct that, we just need to uncheck this box, and now we can decide which scout we might want to use. We're going to select Mr. Wrigglesworth, and if we click on confirm, he's now assigned to this recruitment focus. Now, we could click on confirm and that will set us up for a pretty decent scouting assignment, but if you want even greater control over the minutiae of the details, you could move up to this little option here and click on further details, and you can add additional requirements for your scouts to try and focus on. For example, if you know that you have a particular budget in mind, you could select a maximum transfer value that your scouts will look for players for. And there are a whole host of other additional factors that you can add, such as their height, their preferred foot, and when scouting in foreign markets, you can even instruct your scouts to give you information on whether a work permit is likely to be obtained. Now, the more options you select from this advanced search, the less names your scouts will give you, but potentially the more focused to your needs they could be. And now that we've set up our first recruitment focus, if we want to go and make changes at any point in time, we can go into any of the options that we've selected and we can remove them if we feel that we've made it a little bit too restrictive. And if we reconfirm our choices, it will make those amendments to the recruitment focus that our scout is going to be working on. Now, so far we've looked at how we might scout competitions, areas of the world or particular players, but we can also scout teams as well. To do that, we go up to the Scouting Coverage tab and go down to match and team analysis. Now, from here, there might be a specific forthcoming match that we would like a scout report on, or there might be a particular club that we'd like to search and create scout reports for, but we might also want to assign one of our scouts to be continuously looking at our next opponent and giving us feedback on how they play and who their key players might be. To do that, we can select one of our scouts from the scouting pool, click on confirm, and then confirm again at the bottom, and now this scout's job will be to give us reports on our next opponents. We can also click on a particular club to generate a scout report as well. From the club overview screen, we just go to team reports and then move down to get team reports and hover over the name of the club, and it will allow us to choose a scout that will then go and watch that club and bring us reports of players that might be interested in signing, particularly useful if we're looking for loan players. Now, unfortunately, a similar system can't be used when we're looking at national teams or youth squads at international levels, but as an alternative, you could always select all of the players in a national team squad, right click on one of them, go down to where it says report, report and scout them for your desired length of time. Now, once your scouts have been at work for a while, you'll want to go and look at the reports that they're generating, and to do that, we're going to go back into the Scouting tab, and this time we're going to click on Scouting Center. From there, we can get a list of all the players that our scouts have found at the moment, or we could look at more in-depth information on a player-by-player basis by clicking on cards. From here, you'll see we get a list of pros and cons that your scout has unearthed about this player, as well as a recommendation as to whether you should sign them or not. You can see that the scout will make a prediction as to their current and potential ability, and your scout will give you their opinion as to how this player ranks compared to the players you've already got in your squad. The other useful information your scout will provide is an opinion on what the player's best role might be in the positions that they can play, as well as an estimate as to how much they might cost you and what their wage demands might be. And you can also see that if we click on that player, their full attributes will be revealed, and we can even see information such as their personality and their preferred foot, as well as any player traits that the player might have. Once you've looked through the scouting card that's been provided, you could click on the X button, which will inform your scouts that this is a player that you're not interested in, or alternatively, you could click on the tick, which informs your scouts that you've looked through the card, but you don't wish to make an offer at this time. However, if this is a player that you're interested in, you could click on the Make Offer button, or go into the player themselves and go to transfer and make an offer for the player. So there's our beginner's guide to scouting in FM23, and if you're looking for more how-to tips to play the game, well, this is probably the video for you next.